Why not sit back and relax as you take some time to listen to this story called The Gift of Color? It was a nice day for the old crayon as he sat in the park watching all the young crayons playing and having fun. Suddenly, the sound of quarreling interrupted the peaceful time the old crayon was enjoying. Quickly, he hurried over to break up two young crayons that were fighting. As soon as they were separated, they began to point and accuse each other for starting the fight. Well, the old crayon had been around for many years and was wise in dealing with situations like this. Now a number of other crayons had already gathered around to see what was happening. The old crayon expressed how disappointed he was to see the two crayons fighting. Then he asked everyone to sit down because he had a story to tell them. A long time ago, when crayons were first made, the different colors didn't come in the same box. The blue crayons were in one box, the pink crayons in another box, and the yellow in another. Yes, each of the different colors were in their own separate boxes. "What happened?" called out one of the crayons as she listened to the old crayon tell his story. "Hold on a minute and I'll tell you," he said. Each day, the crayons would take their young ones to the park for some time to play. But they always kept them separated from one another. They didn't think it was right to get together with another crayon if it was different. One day, as the parents were involved in reading and not paying attention, the little crayons wandered away and happened to meet one another. After a while, the little crayons liked being together and became friendly with one another. And in a short time, they were having fun and playing together. They decided to go and play on the slide. They started to laugh and giggle because of all the fun they were having, and it was then that they caught the attention of their parents. When the parents realized what was happening, they became very upset. Each of them took their crayon and angrily went home. After they arrived home, their parents sent them to their rooms. Each of the crayons were sad because they couldn't be with the other crayons. And they each decided to leave home. It happened that each of the crayons returned to the park where they first met. They all had sad faces because they knew their parents did not want them together. The little crayons loved their homes and their neighborhood, but also knew that if they wanted to stay there, they would not be allowed to be friends. As tears fell from their eyes, they decided to find a place where they could go and still be able to enjoy each other's friendship. Meanwhile, back at home their parents had discovered their little crayons were gone. Immediately, they each went out and searched the neighborhood, hoping to find their crayon. The last place they looked was in the park. When they saw each other, they became upset again and ignored one another. Looking down, one of the parents noticed something on the ground. There were teardrops in different colors, some blue, some yellow, and some were pink. When the other two parents saw this, they realized they would need to work together if they were going to find their little crayons. So, together they began to follow the path stained with teardrops. After traveling for a long time, they became more and more concerned for the safety of their little crayons. Finally, they came to an open clearing. There in front of them was an unusual sight. They all looked in amazement as the path they were following was going across a distant hill. The teardrops had run together. From where the parents stood, it looked just like a rainbow. The crayons hurried along and finally reached the top of that colorful hill. Down in the valley below, they spotted their little crayons. For a moment, the parents became very quiet as they heard the sound of laughter and singing. Their hearts were touched by the sound of joy coming out of the valley. One of the crayons said to the others, "I've never heard my little crayon this happy. I think it was wrong for us to keep them apart from each other because they were different." The others agreed how wrong they had been. So they went down into the valley to share what they now realized. As the crayons were playing, they noticed that their parents were coming. They were afraid they were going to be separated again. When their parents arrived, they admitted how wrong they were for not allowing them to be friends with one another. Then they all gathered together in a circle, each holding one another's hands. All the crayons were glad to be together. Then the parents said, "Now we know there is something more valuable than a pot of gold at the end of a rainbow." With faces full of smiles, everyone agreed. After telling the story, the old crayon asked those who were listening if they now realize why they should value each other, even if they are different. The two crayons that had been fighting earlier each admitted to being wrong. They shook hands to show there were no hard feelings, and all the other crayons began to smile. Now when you open a box of crayons and see the many different colors inside, remember this story about the crayons that learned to love their differences. There would never be the beauty of a rainbow if there was only one color. For more information about this and other stories by the storyteller, go to www.joeystory.com.